Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from the Mully and Haugh Show on 670 The Score. Dan Wieters from the Chicago Tribune covers the Bears at Halas Hall, where he is right now. Dan, we're talking within an hour or so after Shane Waldron and Eric Washington, the new coordinators for the Chicago Bears, were introduced by a new look Matt Eberflus, which may have stolen the show. Matt Eberflus had a lot of nice things to say about Washington and Waldron, and they made their first impressions. What were yours before we get into some of the nitty gritty from Shane Waldron and Washington?
Well, first and foremost, I told our friend Mark Grody that now he has to grow some gray stubble to continue to have the Eberflus look pay off for him like he was doing late in the season. And so Grody's got some work ahead of him. He thinks he's very capable of stepping up to that challenge. As it relates to the new coordinators here, it's a new era. And I think that it would be important to emphasize that the Bears are going into a very pivotal stretch ahead of them with a new staff that we need to learn a lot more about. We need to know how capable they are of propelling this team to the next level, because if they don't, we're going to be sitting through another set of introductions in the not too distant future. And so I think that my initial takeaway was just kind of realizing that interesting dynamic of having these new introductions at a time where Matt Eberflus, who's been here for 2 years, is going to have to show results in 2024 in order to keep this thing moving in the right direction.
I thought they had a nice presentation. I felt like it was definitely something that was a positive thing to do, and they hired him a while ago, so maybe this was overdue. But I've said on the morning show, and I think that what I heard backed it up a little bit. This was all about style, not necessarily substance. We were going to get a sense of how each man, how each coach who's a veteran of the NFL communicates with an audience, maybe even commands a room, if you will. But I don't think you were going to get many specifics. I think everybody wanted to know how much Shane Waldron would give about quarterback debate, and he wasn't
Very little.
Very little. And I think that's smart. I think that's very smart because we aren't at that stage yet, and he isn't the one that should be revealing any kind of clue, even though we all want to know. Let's start with Waldron. Dan, I mean, he's definitely fits on Matt Eberflus's staff. You can see why he's a grinder. You can see why he's intense, and you can see how he would be able to explain the game and work as hard as anybody. Passionate about his job, proven in what he has done. And I think that overall he made a positive first impression and didn't say anything that would give you reason to think, oh boy, this is going to be a tough guy to listen to. I didn't think so, and I felt like he represented himself very professionally.
Seemed a little bit nervous to me out of the gates, and some of that's just getting comfortable probably with what you can say and what you can't say at a very delicate time of the year. Mark Potash, longtime veteran on this beat, made an observation at the end of both of the coordinators in saying that we only had one current player's name brought up, and it was only a first name. It was Montez by Eric Washington. And so there wasn't a lot of specifics about the team and the units that these guys are inheriting. For me, going into this with Shane today, some of the things that you're trying to at least get at is his overview of the quarterback position. Well, he wasn't going to give much there, did not answer directly in any way, shape, or form a question that was specifically about Caleb Williams that I asked, just getting his initial impression of the guy that the Bears are going to have to study here in the coming weeks. Didn't offer a lot on his evaluation of Justin Fields. In fact, nothing on his evaluation of Justin Fields. Beyond that, though, I thought the two things to me that really stood out and resonated were, number one, him describing his growth as a play caller. Obviously, one of the reasons the Bears were attracted to him in this role is because he has previous play calling experience. He talked about kind of the evolution over 3 years in Seattle and the ability to kind of find calm in game on the line situations, which we talk about the quarterback all the time. Well, your coordinator and your play caller needs to have that as well. And so he reflected back on a couple game-winning drives in this past season with the Seahawks that he felt very proudly about in regards to his ability to find the right play, to understand that even if you don't call the right play in one moment, the next play could be the most important play of the game. So I thought that was interesting for a guy that is going to need to lean on that previous play calling experience with whoever's playing quarterback for the Bears in 2024. And I guess I'll get your feedback on that, and then I'll give you my other take.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. As far as it pertains to kind of like the nerves or anxiety, I feel like anybody in that situation might have some of that, even though you might be proven because of what you can't say, how excited you might be about this opportunity. He mentioned the Bears storied franchise a couple times, and I think that definitely is something that he connected with. But there are times, and I know we talk about Matt Eberflus not being the most skilled orator either, but there are times when Matt Eberflus would appear at the end of a season or after a game or whatever the case may be, and I thought that he was a little bit nervous at the end of
Sure.
his second season. So I think sometimes this is just kind of the way intense coaches operate. And Shane Waldron strikes me as somebody who is going to be somebody who's plugged in all the time. That's not a bad thing. And I also think I'm hesitant to be too analytical about this or nitpicky because Dan, I think I've said this before. It's a common thing in situations like this. You want to hear from these guys, and you
Sure.
sort of not implore, but you encourage the Bears and for whatever team you're covering to put these guys out
No
there.
doubt.
When they do, they can't say very much, so I don't feel that comfortable or
Yeah, no doubt.
raising the way that he communicated because I thought he was just fine.
Yeah, no doubt. We just have to kind of watch it as we go forward and
Yeah,
see how quickly he acclimates to this role. Because again, this is a big boy job. For
it's a
these
tough job.
head coaches, these coordinators, the next quarterback to come in here, you got to understand that you're up there every single week. And the predecessors in all those positions can tell you that every word you speak is going to be scrutinized and it's going to be taken to radio stations and podcasts and blogs and newspapers and online publications, and it's going to be scrutinized. Ask Justin Fields about his social media habits, which we can get to later, and just have an understanding of how bright this spotlight is and how intense the scrutiny can be. I did think, another one of the skins on the wall for Shane Waldron right now is the work he did in Seattle in reviving Geno Smith's career. And when he was asked about that, he talked pretty glowingly about the connection that he had with Geno's ability to be dialed in. And he spoke specifically of his unwavering mindset and the ability to have a positive mindset regardless of the situation, where Geno just believed that he was an NFL starter and carried himself in that way every single day, even when it wasn't guaranteed that he was going to be that. And he sort of catalyzed his own growth. And then that connection piece with Shane Waldron allowed it to go to a level where he obviously did some amazing things in 2022. And so you want to replicate that. Whoever the quarterback is here, you want to be able to instill that kind of mindset. You want to be able to create that kind of bond and have that synergy between play caller and quarterback that produces results. Because in the end, this is all about results on game days, and then everything else. The performances at the lectern become much more positive, and they are graded much more positively when you're on a 3 to 5 game winning streak.
He talked about what Geno Smith was able to do to go from being Russell Wilson's backup to being a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, which I think Shane Waldron gets and probably deserves a share of the credit for. I think that's what he talked about today. And did it strike you that the biggest thing that he revealed was maybe just how positive Geno Smith was able to keep in the midst of, that kind
Yeah.
of transition and maintain that attitude? And it wasn't
Yeah.
anything technical or anything mechanical or anything schematic. It was all about the perseverance that one has to show in
Yeah, the
situations like
mindset,
that.
the
Yeah.
mindset, and the mindset is such a critical piece of that position. And that's why this next set of homework that the Bears have to do on the quarterbacks that they may be considering to replace Justin Fields, aka Caleb Williams, and some others, is going to require this homework piece. And Shane did talk about that generally in terms of going out and really enjoying the part of the pre-draft process that will start next week in Indianapolis, where you get these 18-minute formal interviews at the combine, and then you get a pro day, and you get a visit, and you get a on-campus visit, a Hallis Hall visit, whatever it may be with these players. He talked about learning their story. Everybody's got a backstory. Everybody's got motivations. Everybody's got goals and reasons why they're chasing those goals. And it is really key and critical for a coaching staff to dial in on that and understand that DNA and understand those compasses, so that you get a better understanding of who a player is. And then if you're so inclined to unite with them, how you can push them in the direction that they will respond to coaching and get the best out of them.
Do you think that coaching, and this is a total tangent a little bit, but I'm just curious before we move on to Eric Washington or any other observations about Shane Waldron. I was listening to him and I wondered this, and it's more rhetorical because I'm not sure there is an answer. But do you think the coaching profession, I think specifically maybe I don't know if that's college as much as pro because of their different roles. Like these guys are like relentlessly positive individuals. Their makeup is very. Like, there are exceptions, I'm sure, but like I'm thinking when you listen to Shane Waldron, he sounded a little bit like Luke Getzey at times. He sounded a little bit like Matt Nagy at times, and the job is so public and the criticism is so consistent
Yeah.
that I do wonder, does it make these guys relentlessly positive as a result of what they know they have to face? Or does it attract guys who are relentlessly positive because of the job description? I don't know which is the case, but it does strike me that that's always the first impression most of the time of these coaches in these situations is that, boy, does he find a way to stay positive and keep things like looking optimistically when you look at it. Not everyone's going to look at it that way.
I think it's the latter. I mean, I really do think that, particularly at this level, leadership requires you to set a tone, and the tone that you're going to get the most results out of is being able to win or lose, come back in a steady mindset, but also just have the people that you're leading believe that you're going in the right direction, and that even if it is obstructed at times, that the road that you're on, you're going to find a way through it, and you're going to get to where you want to go. And I just think that's part of the DNA and the wiring you need to have in those positions to be able to galvanize a room and galvanize a unit. And so they're going to have to squeeze results out of that. I did think, Shane also talked today about being adaptable, which was a priority for Matt Eberflus. I thought that was a buzzword here at Haugh Hall today, and understanding that, you are going to be required to put together the puzzle, and you're sometimes going to be forced to put together the puzzle every single week. Sometimes you're going to be facing an opponent that makes you reconfigure the puzzle. Sometimes you're going to have injuries or personnel decisions that affect the puzzle you're putting together. And so the ability to be adaptable is required in there. And then Shane just talked about, from his own standpoint, being able to teach and position players properly, and I think those two things are huge, and his ability to do that at a high level is going to be tested, and obviously, again, incrementally, and then at the end of the season, we'll have results to judge that show, are you teaching well, are you positioning players properly? And sometimes even that isn't always enough, and the results just aren't where they need to be, and everybody's got to go find a new start.
How does he feel about him already having a parking structure named after him to the Waldron deck? He was not.
I know
asked
you're
about
excited
that.
about that. I mean, that it's probably going to get torn down soon when they're building the new stadium
Yeah,
on the
okay.
Waldron deck. So we'll see which direction that goes.
How about Eric Washington? He has been here before. He knows the Chicago scene from coaching at Northwestern and being on the Bears staff of a pretty good defense. You weren't here then. Did he reference that? And what
Yeah,
do
he
you
did.
think of the impression he made?
I thought Eric had a good command today of the room, and just trying to articulate some of his vision and why he will work in this role under Matt Eberflus, with Matt Eberflus still being the guy that's going to be calling the defense on game days. In relation to his previous stop here at Haugh Hall, 2008 to 2010, under Lovie Smith, that was his entry into the NFL coaching ranks, coming over from Northwestern. He was a defensive assistant initially, and then took over the defensive line. And he talked about a defensive line that included Julius Peppers and Alex Brown and Israel Adonijah and Tommy Harris and Spice Adams, and just talked about the varying skill sets that group had, but the similar mindset they had. And you remember it, you covered it, you know how relentless that group was as part of a defense that obviously had big time playmakers behind them as well in the linebacking core and the secondary. And you just, you feel the appreciation for that. Eric, it's been 16 years since he started that gig. He's got experience in Carolina. He's got experience in Buffalo. He's got wisdom that those stops provided that are going to help him be a resource and a guy that can provide productive feedback and guidance to Matt Eberflus as he kind of juggles this role. We talked last year about, being the guy who calls the plays, but still being responsible for being the head coach of the football team. Well, Eric Washington seemed very comfortable in the supporting role and very confident that he could be what Matt Eberflus needs him to be in that role. And I thought that was interesting to hear today.
That's a big reason why he had to be very appealing, because he has had experience, and he doesn't seem to bring a big ego to Haugh Hall, and that was evident today just in hearing him talk. He did seem a little bit more seasoned. I do remember him somewhat from the first time, but that was a long time ago. He's a much different coach in person now. 16 years later, 14 years later, whatever the case is. And I think that, it's just another example in Waldron, in Washington. You're getting guys whose experience is very appealing. And at this point of the Bears' growth with this roster, that's what you want. You don't want guys who are doing the job, any of those jobs, for the first time. You want somebody who's going to be able to come in here, not be phased by any pressure or the market or the intense scrutiny, but they're going to be able to produce nonetheless.
No question. And Eric Washington expressed his appeal in this job, as he was going through the interview process in January, and understanding that this is a defense that you are coming in to help oversee that was the best in the NFL last year in stopping the run. That was top 5 in the league in takeaways. And you see those two foundational pieces of being able to make a team one-dimensional by stopping the run effectively, and then being able to capitalize on that by taking the football away. And you see a formula for winning football. And so it was really interesting to hear him say that, and then kind of add the exclamation point on top of it by saying, I'm here to help build the best pass rush in football. And he believes in his ability to do that with the defensive line. He obviously has a tremendous chess piece to work with in Montez Sweat. And so now he's just eager to get to work with this group, understanding that, particularly with his expertise on the defensive line, that you've got a chance now to take 2 young defensive tackles. You've got Andrew Billings as that stuffer in the middle. You've got Montez Sweat and whatever else they decide to add in free agency in the draft to help your pass rush. And now you've got a chance to really take a defense that was on the rise and now turn it into what Bears defenses of old used to be, which is just the engine of success.
No doubt about it. Last thing on Washington I'd say is that, it feels like the Bears, after sort of creating the dysfunction that they had to endure with the Alan Williams leaving and Matt Eberflus adjusting and calling the signals, and now you look at what's happened with the personnel, and you look at now with the kind of staff they have. It's a very good, proven veteran defensive staff. Matt Eberflus is part of that defensive staff because he's the play caller. But you package that with what they still could get in free agency if they're able to go out and get an edge rusher or whatever the case is. If they replace Eddie Jackson adequately and they draft intelligently, the Bears defense could be as special as everyone says. And when you hear Eric Washington talk, you do a lot of nodding, and because you feel like this is a group that is just ready to take off.
Well, yeah. And when he was asked about kind of Matt's role in staying in the play calling chair, he essentially said, why would you want to stymie the momentum of what the Bears built up last year? And so you know that they were on an upward climb toward the latter stages of last year, and you want to keep that rolling and take it to a new level. I did also think, as we reflect back on his period here from 2008 to 2010, he talked about that being a defense that wasn't built on scheme, that they weren't trying to outsmart opponents, that it was, we're going to be a fundamentally sound team. We're going to have terrific situational awareness. We're going to really, really hone in on player development. And then we're going to ask our guys to win their one-on-ones. And so those are some principles here that seem to marry up very well with the philosophy and the vision of the head coach, Matt Eberflus. And so those guys should be on the same page at the outset. And then it's all about just kind of creating that momentum and making sure it doesn't slow down.
Now on to the serious stuff, Instagram. So what was your impression? What did you think of Justin Fields' very interesting appearance on the St. Brown Brothers podcast, in which he explained why he unfollowed the Bears? And he also said some things about the Falcons and the Lions and a lot of other things that led you to believe it was definitely a version of Justin Fields we rarely see. He was extremely relaxed. He was very candid. I thought it was his best version of the public version of Justin Fields, probably the one that people in that locker room see and relate to and love so much. What did you think, Dan?
Did you listen to the entirety of the podcast?
I listened to the majority of it. Yeah, probably the last 5 minutes I was out, but I did listen to most of it.
I asked you that just because there was some chatter in the media room this afternoon about it being a bit of a hard listen. As smooth and comfortable and admirable as Justin Fields came across, the podcast itself was so clunky. There's a lot of gratuitous cursing. It's all over the map. There's some immature. It just felt like we needed some guardrails on the thing.
But let's be honest about what this is. You're right.
No
You're
doubt.
right. You have two brothers. Whether it's the Kelseys or the St. Browns, there's going to be some unprofessional aspects of a podcast that is basically two football players getting a third football player, and essentially what we're doing is this is locker room talk. This is the way they talk to each other. It's informal. It's disjointed. It's there aren't follow-up questions that you naturally would ask, but the expectations are low. I mean, I listened to it on my drive in very early this on Thursday morning because it was the best use of my time in my commute, and I wanted to have a sense of what Justin Fields said that was relevant. Now, that's the only thing we care about. You can, I'm sure Potash was probably leading the charge. You can pick apart
He was not.
Oh, okay. But it was choppy, and it was maybe difficult at times to decipher. But the parts from Justin Fields were interesting.
Just a little aside for me, if you could get Big Voice Guy to record a promo for the St. Brown Brothers that says, informal, disjointed, no follow-up questions, low expectations. Join us next week on the St. Brown Brothers podcast.
That'd be accurate. That'd be accurate. You know,
as it relates to Justin's sentiments and the great Instagram mystery that bubbled up this week. I listen, like, I don't hide the fact that I truly admire the way Justin handles himself, and he handled himself in that form as well as he's ever handled himself. He was comfortable. He was smooth. He didn't seem like he was hiding anything. He tried to give an answer to that question, essentially saying, look, I'm going on vacation soon. I unfollowed the NFL. I unfollowed the Bears. I was tired of seeing this stuff in my timeline. Every post that has to do with the Bears is either keep Justin, we want Fields, or, go draft Caleb. And eventually it gets exhausting. Well, man, Justin, I can empathize because I've been exhausted by it, and it has nothing to do with me. That's his entire life that people have been talking about for weeks in ways that I can't even imagine how exhausting that would get. So his ability to have thick skin, to be able to roll with that, to be able to explain that was great. And then I also thought it was just really telling that he said he just wants an answer, as I think most of the league does. Which direction is it going to be? Is Justin going to be traded? Is he going to be brought back? Is he going to be brought back alongside a rookie? There's a lot of answers that need to come. And until they come, I think he's going to be left kind of swimming in this pretty uncomfortable these waters where you just don't know what to expect, and you can't ever really relax.
I love that he called out Alex Anzalone as a dirty player for the Lions. I love that he did that. That's the only
direct shot at Amon-Ra too, because there's the Lions rivalry there.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a good rivalry, and he played well against the Lions. And I think that when he did that, that was the only time I've thought this offseason, like, oh boy, that would be fun to have him back, because if they played the Lions, that would be great. But it's a moot point.
He also called out Tony Corrente from the Monday Night Football game of 2021, the little hip check into Cassius Marsh and the penalty flag that may have cost the Bears a fourth quarter Justin Fields win. By the way, that's what that penalty did. And so Justin said he felt cheated, and it was another moment where I agreed with him that in my time covering the league, that was one of the most egregious mistakes and poor penalty flag throws that I've ever seen in the sport. And so those scars don't always go away, and they trigger memories. And when you're asked about them, you're free to expound on them, as Justin did in that instance.
Well, it just underscores that whoever's on Justin Fields' team that is in charge of, PR or image or media training, tell him to be more like this at his next stop. Or if he returns to Chicago with the Bears media corps, because I think that maybe he doesn't have to be that quite informal and talk that fast.
There's a difference between.
It was fun. It was a fun version of Justin Fields.
There's a difference between the middle of February, you got nothing to do, and Wednesday of week 5, and you got a long list of to-do list tasks for your football responsibility. Sometimes that makes you a little bit more rigid and uptight. But I'm with you. He came across well, and I didn't walk away from that podcast being like, oh man, this is a dude who's in over his head. You don't feel that way. You just kind of want a resolution to this quarterback situation that's hanging out there. He obviously wants that as soon as anybody. And so we'll see which direction it goes. I think you could probably interpret that the actual act of taking your thumb and clicking unfollow on the account of the team that you're employed by is a subconsciously or consciously an understanding of the direction this may be headed. And so that's that, right?
To me, it's like going on vacation and not checking your work email, or if I'm going to Aruba next week. I'm not, but I wish if I were, I would, on my phone, I would probably not. I would delete the Odyssey app just because I wouldn't want to. I would get. Everyone wants to get away. This was essentially
He said he was headed to Amsterdam and Milan. So
very fancy. I know, very fancy vacation. The last thing on that I thought was really sad, and not everyone really appreciated me pointing this out on the morning show, but I do think it was sad to me. Uh, his highlight of his Bears career, if this is the end of it, was the first preseason game. Now I understand what he means because it represented, hey, I'm a kid who just wanted to walk on Clemson football team. I've arrived. I'm a pro. I'm in the NFL. That's great. And I think it shows kind of a degree of humility that it's obvious to see in him. But I also think like that speaks to why we are where we are following the Bears. That's the highlight of your Bears starting quarterback the last 3 years. They don't have a playoff game to point to. They don't have a division title that says, I've arrived. It was the first preseason game, and it never got better than that.
Right. And, look, like you're looking for signature victories. There's only 10 to choose from, and so you've got the Lions game this year. You've got the New England game on Monday night. You've got the Falcons finale at Soldier Field on New Year's Eve and the cigar party that happened after it. They're the Washington game on Thursday Night Football, the 4 touchdowns to DJ Moore. It's not a long menu to choose from. And you wish it was longer. And if it was longer, we probably aren't having the discussions that we've been having for the last, 15 months, to be quite honest with you, about the direction of this franchise and this quarterback.
I was hoping that he was going to pull out something like a double truck of the Chicago Tribune from whatever weekend it was where you ranked every start. And he would have said, with Dan Wiederer's help, I was able to come to the conclusion that whatever it was my number one memory. I can't even remember which game it was.
It was a Washington game. And the reason I know that right off the top of my hand is because we did that after 35 starts. I just updated it this week to include 36, 37, and 38. And the Falcons game on New Year's Eve checked in at number 2. So that tells you where maybe number 3. It might have been 3 behind the Dolphins explosion. I can't remember where we slotted, but it was a top 3 start to end. And there just weren't enough of those big performances that were married up with victories that led you to believe that, okay, this is an absolute express train to the success that this franchise wants to enjoy.
I wonder where his first Falcons start will fall on his list of all-time best starts. I wonder, we'll have to wait until week 1 of 2024 to find that out, perhaps.
So you're reporting that. Okay, I got it.
I'm not reporting that. No,
reports
this is pure
speculation to go to the Atlanta Falcons.
Pure speculation. I am not. Although, did you hear there was a report that I think Jordan Schultz, a guy who's been in the news, he was in the news last in Chicago when Allen Robinson was talking to him. Jordan Schultz reported there's a buzz around Atlanta, around the Falcons, that Justin Fields is coming to town. So we'll have to definitely monitor that. Dan, now go ahead.
No, I was going to say one thing just to tack on, because these conversations, they get all muddied and people don't do a great job of trying to unmuddy them, where you say Justin Fields is going to command a first-round pick, and then you say he's going to go to the Falcons. Well, the Falcons aren't going to trade the number 8 pick, most likely. And so then he would probably command a high 2. And so sometimes when you're talking about what is the trade compensation that the Bears are going to get back by trading Justin Fields, it depends on what team they're actually trading with to see what they have to give and what they're willing to give given their picks available in their current situation. And so all that stuff is really fluid, and it makes me laugh a little bit. There's things in this business that will make you laugh because they're not tethered to NFL reality. One of them is like the concept of guys whose pre-draft stock is shooting up the draft board, in the month of March, when you're like, no, like these teams have had, it just means more people in the league are telling reporters how they feel about a guy. It doesn't mean they just turned on the tape on the first Saturday of March and decided, oh man, this guy suddenly caught my eye and he's shooting up the draft board. So I don't know. Anyway, that's a little aside.